On November 23, 2023, Thanksgiving Day, at exactly 2:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, while our family was seated around the same mahogany dining table that had hosted 5 generations of Worthington holiday meals since 1887, my eldest son Benjamin Thomas Worthington placed a manila folder in front of me with such calculated force that it knocked over my glass of 1982 Chateau Latour, spilling $2,000 worth of Bordeaux across my late wife Catherine's hand-embroidered Irish linen tablecloth that she'd spent 3 months creating the year before she died. The wine spread like blood across the cream fabric, seeping into the delicate thread she'd sewn while already fighting the cancer that would take her, staining the cornucopias and autumn leaves she'd crafted with hands that shook from chemotherapy. "Sign these papers now, or we declare you incompetent within 48 hours, Benjamin announced, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of 14 family members like a blade through warm butter. "We have Dr. Morrison's diagnosis. Early-stage dementia with severe cognitive impairment. Inability to manage complex financial affairs. It's already notarized, witnessed, and ready to file with the probate court Monday morning." What Benjamin didn't know, what none of my 3 children knew, was that every single room in my 15,000-square-foot house had been wired with military-grade surveillance equipment since January 2019, installed by a former NSA contractor who owed me a favor for my defense contracting days. 73 cameras, each capable of 4K resolution and night vision. 42 audio pickups that could capture a whisper from 30 feet away. All feeding to servers in 3 different locations, backing up to cloud storage in Switzerland, Singapore, and Iceland every 15 minutes. I'd been recording their conspiracy to steal my $118,743,892.44 fortune for the past 6 months. Every meeting, every phone call, every practice session where they rehearsed this very confrontation. My name is Thomas Worthington. I'm 74 years old, former CEO of Worthington Industries, and this is the story of how I turned my family's Thanksgiving ultimatum into their complete destruction, made 9 figures disappear in 48 hours through 17 international trusts, exposed their fraud to federal prosecutors who were already building cases against them, and served justice colder than the November wind that rattled the windows while they ate their last meal as free people. Let me paint you the complete, unvarnished picture of the empire they tried to steal and the man they tried to destroy. I built Worthington Industries from absolutely nothing in 1973, starting with a $5,000 loan from the Small Business Administration that required 17 different forms and 3 separate interviews where they asked why a 23-year-old kid thought he could revolutionize industrial water filtration. The loan officer, Mrs. Patricia Henley, a woman who'd seen 1,000 dreams die on her desk, looked at my prototype, built from salvaged parts and held together with electrical tape and prayer, and said, "Mr. Worthington, this looks like something my grandson would make in shop class." I replied, "Your grandson must be brilliant then, because this will make dirty water cleaner than what comes out of your tap." She laughed and approved the loan, later investing her own retirement savings when we went public. I was 23 years old, fresh out of MIT with a chemical engineering degree that cost more than my parents' house and dreams bigger than my checking account. My apartment in Somerville, Massachusetts, was really just a converted garage behind a Vietnamese family's house, 200 square feet with a hot plate, a mattress on the floor, and a bathroom so small you could sit on the toilet and brush your teeth in the sink simultaneously. The rent was $75 a month, which was still almost more than I could afford. I ate ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, occasionally splurging on a can of tuna for protein. My laboratory was the garage itself, my equipment stolen or borrowed from MIT during off hours when the security guard, an old Irishman named Murphy, would conveniently take extended bathroom breaks. The technology one developed could remove 99.97% of industrial contaminants from wastewater at 1/10 the cost of existing systems. The key innovation was a dual-membrane system using polymers that Catherine would later perfect, combined with a catalytic process that broke down complex chemicals into harmless components. The first prototype exploded, covering me in purple dye that didn't wash off for 3 weeks. The second leaked so badly it flooded the Vietnamese family's garden, though their vegetables grew 3 times normal size that year. The third actually worked, filtering water so pure you could develop photographs with it. The first company to take a chance on us was Textile Dynamics, a mill in Lawrence facing $3 million in EPA fines that would have bankrupted them. Their wastewater was a toxic rainbow of dyes and chemicals that had turned the Merrimack River colors that didn't exist in nature. Our system cleaned it so thoroughly that the EPA inspector, convinced it was a trick, tested the output water 5 times. When it came back cleaner than his reference samples, he accused us of using tap water. I invited him to drink it. He declined, but the mill got their permit renewed, and word spread through the industrial corridors of New England like the very water we cleaned, fast, clear, and impossible to stop. By 1980, we had 43 employees and contracts with DuPont, General Electric, and Monsanto. I was working 18-hour days, sleeping in the office more often than my apartment, which I'd upgraded to an actual bedroom in Medford. By 1990, we were international, with systems in 43 countries including China, where our technology cleaned water from factories that officially didn't exist. By 2000, we were the gold standard in industrial water treatment, with annual revenues of $400 million and a reputation for solving problems others said were impossible. By 2010, we held 147 patents, employed 3,400 people, and had saved approximately 17 billion gallons of water from contamination. When I took the company public in 2005, the IPO valued us at $2.3 billion. Goldman Sachs handled the offering, and I remember standing on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, watching our ticker symbol, WTI, appear for the first time, thinking about that garage in Somerville and Mrs. Henley's $5,000 gamble. When I sold my controlling stake to Veolia, a French conglomerate, in 2018, keeping only a 15% share, I walked away with $467 million in cash and securities. After taxes that made my accountant weep, charitable giving that included $10 million to MIT for a new engineering lab, and employee bonuses, every single person who'd been with us more than 10 years got at least $50,000. Those with 20 years got $100,000. I was left with $318 million. But money was never the point. The point was proving that one person with an idea and insomnia could change an industry, could literally make the world cleaner, could build something that mattered. I met Catherine Elizabeth Hartley at the American Chemical Society Conference in Chicago on September 14, 1974, at 3:17 p.m. during the afternoon coffee break between sessions on polymer applications and industrial processes. She was presenting a paper on semi-permeable membrane technology that directly challenged not just my fundamental assumptions about filtration, but essentially called my entire approach charmingly primitive but ultimately doomed. She had doctorate degrees from Yale in both chemistry and environmental science, having completed both simultaneously in 5 years, which should have been impossible but wasn't if you were Catherine. She spoke 4 languages fluently: English, French, Mandarin, and chemistry, played concert-level piano, had published 17 papers by age 26, and laughed at my terrible jokes about molecular bonds with a sound like champagne bubbles rising through crystal. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours, continuing through the cocktail reception where we ignored everyone else, through dinner where we forgot to eat, ending in the hotel bar at 2 a.m. when they finally kicked us out. We talked about everything: polymer chains and Chopin, filtration rates and Fitzgerald, membrane technology and membrane potential in neurons, which led to a discussion about consciousness, free will, and whether molecules had preferences. She destroyed my theories with such elegant data and charming ruthlessness that I fell in love before she finished her second equation. When I asked her to continue the conversation over breakfast, she said, "Only if you promise to defend your position better. I prefer my debates with Eggs Benedict to be challenging." We were married 8 months later, on May 18, 1975, in her family's garden in Greenwich, Connecticut, surrounded by roses her grandmother had planted in 1923 and relatives who couldn't understand why she was marrying an entrepreneur instead of a professor. Her father, a Yale chemistry professor himself, pulled me aside and said, "She's smarter than both of us combined. Don't forget that." I never did. Catherine wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her athletic frame. She'd been a competitive swimmer at Yale, nearly making the Olympic trials. I wore a rented tuxedo that was too short in the arms and too tight in the shoulders, making me look like a scarecrow dressed for a funeral. She said I looked perfect. Catherine was my partner in every sense of the word. She ran our R&D department for 20 years while simultaneously raising our children, holding 37 patents in her own name, including the breakthrough that made our technology scalable to industrial levels. She could solve differential equations in her head that I needed a computer for, could charm investors while explaining polymer chemistry in terms they'd understand, could make our 3 teenage children laugh at the dinner table when laughing at parents was decidedly uncool and probably illegal in their minds. She'd work in the lab until 3 a.m., then be up at 6 to make breakfast, help with homework, and somehow look elegant at the 8 a.m. board meeting. When she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer on October 3, 2018, the doctor gave her 6 months. She lived 6 months and 12 days, as if she'd calculated the exact amount of time needed to say goodbye properly. She spent those months creating, finishing research projects, writing letters to the children for future milestones, embroidering that tablecloth that now bore wine stains and betrayal. When she died on March 15, 2019, at 3:33 a.m., something in me broke that hasn't healed and probably never will. She went to sleep complaining of a headache, kissed me goodnight, and said, "Tom, make sure the children remember that money is just a tool. Character is the only real inheritance. And water the orchids, they're thirsty." Her last words were about orchids. That was Catherine, practical until the end. We had 3 children, each born exactly 3 years apart, planned with the precision Catherine brought to everything except her death, which came unscheduled and unwelcome. Benjamin Thomas Worthington arrived on July 4, 1976, at 11:47 p.m., our bicentennial baby, born during fireworks that seemed arranged just for him. The nurses said they'd never seen a newborn who looked so alert, so calculating, as if he was already evaluating the room's net worth. Even as an infant, he had an unsettling intensity, studying faces like spreadsheets, crying only when the return on investment seemed favorable. Jennifer Catherine Worthington was born April 15, 1979, at 12:01 a.m., tax day, which proved prophetic given her later obsession with financial manipulation and her ability to find loopholes in any system, including family loyalty. She came out sideways, requiring an emergency C-section that nearly killed Catherine, as if even being born required Jennifer to make things complicated and expensive. As a child, she'd charge her brothers interest on loans of Halloween candy, keeping meticulous records in a notebook labeled "Accounts Receivable." Michael David Worthington completed our family on January 1, 1982, at exactly midnight, a New Year's baby who made the local news and never stopped seeking attention afterward. The Boston Globe ran his picture with the headline "First Baby of 1982, and he kept that clipping in his wallet until the day he was arrested, as if being first at something once meant he deserved everything forever. I tried to raise them with values, not just wealth. They had chores despite our housekeepers. Benjamin managed the family investment portfolio starting at age 12. Jennifer handled the household books. Michael was responsible for the gardens Catherine loved. They worked summer jobs despite trust funds that could have let them summer in Europe instead. Benjamin worked at a water treatment plant, coming home reeking of chlorine and resentment. Jennifer filed papers at a law firm, learning early how to hide documents that mattered. Michael volunteered at a hospital, though I later learned he spent most of his time flirting with nurses and stealing prescription pads. They attended public schools until high school, despite being able to afford Exeter or Andover. I wanted them to know real people, not just rich people. But money has its own gravity, bending everything around it, warping space and time and children, and my 3 were pulled into its orbit despite my best efforts to keep them grounded. Benjamin went to Harvard for undergraduate, then Harvard Business School, coming back talking about maximizing shareholder value at family dinners and referring to his siblings as potential co-investors. Jennifer got her law degree from Yale, specializing in estate planning, which should have been my first warning. Why does a 25-year-old need to know 17 ways to hide assets? Michael became a psychiatrist, which seemed noble until I realized he saw patients not as people to heal but as problems to solve and bill for, charging $400 an hour to tell people their mothers didn't love them enough. The changes started subtly after Catherine's death, like cracks in a foundation that only become visible when the house starts tilting. At first, it seemed like concern. Benjamin would comment on my isolation in the family estate, a 15,000-square-foot monument to success that felt like a mausoleum without Catherine. He'd suggest I might be happier in a community with peers, showing me brochures for luxury senior living facilities that cost $20,000 a month and looked like hospitals designed by hotel chains. Jennifer started finding errors in my financial decisions, questioning investments I'd been making successfully since before she was born. "Dad, you bought Tesla at $200. It's at $1,000 now. Why haven't you sold?" "Because I don't need the money," I'd explain, and because Elon Musk reminded me of myself at that age, crazy enough to think he could change the world and smart enough to actually do it. Michael began dropping by unannounced to check on my mental state, asking questions that felt more like tests than conversations. "Dad, what year is it?" 2023. "Who's the president?" "Someone who's older than me and still considered competent to run the country." "Can you count backward from 100 by sevens?" 93, 86, 79, 72. "Would you like me to continue, or have I passed your little quiz?" He'd make notes in a leather journal, pretending to write casually while actually documenting what he considered evidence of decline. I indulged them at first, thinking it was grief manifesting as worry. I was 70 years old, living alone in a house with 12 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, and 1 resident. I managed hundreds of millions in assets across 17 different investment accounts, 3 family trusts, and a foundation Catherine had started. Some concern was natural, even touching. But by 2021, concern had morphed into something darker, like concern's evil twin who went to law school and majored in elder abuse. They started showing up together, coordinating their visits like military campaigns. They'd arrive in formation, Benjamin from the left, Jennifer from the right, Michael through the center, surrounding me in my own study like I was a hostile takeover target. They'd tag-team conversations about powers of attorney and trust modifications, one distracting while another documented, like pickpockets working a mark. They'd exchange glances when I forgot someone's name or repeated a story, not realizing I'd been telling that same story the same way for 30 years. It was called consistency, not dementia. The surveillance system was installed in January 2019, initially for security after a series of break-ins in our neighborhood where teenagers were stealing prescription drugs and expensive wine, 2 things I had in abundance. The installation took 3 weeks and cost $487,000, which my children would later cite as evidence of my impaired judgment and paranoid ideation. The system included 73 cameras with facial recognition, 42 audio pickups with voice identification, motion sensors that could detect a mouse at 50 yards, and infrared scanners that could see through walls. Perhaps excessive, but I'd learned that paranoia is just pattern recognition with a bad reputation. But after Catherine died and I was alone in the house except for the ghosts and the housekeepers, I found myself reviewing footage just to feel less lonely, to pretend the house wasn't empty, to hear voices that weren't selling me something. That's when I started noticing things. Benjamin going through my desk when I was napping, photographing documents with his phone, particularly the will and trust papers. Jennifer in my study at 2 a.m., using my computer to access financial accounts, her face lit by the screen's glow as she transferred small amounts to accounts I didn't recognize. Michael making calls from my library, saying things like, "The cognitive decline is progressing as expected. 6 months maximum before we can move." By early 2023, their conspiracy was in full swing like a jazz band from hell. I have recordings of them meeting in my own living room on January 15, 2023, at 7:43 p.m., while I was supposedly at a doctor's appointment that they'd scheduled for me. Benjamin opened with, "We need to move before he remarries or changes the will. I've seen him talking to that woman from the country club." That woman was 82 and suffering from advanced Parkinson's. We were discussing whether assisted suicide should be legal, not planning a wedding. February 28, 2023, 8:15 p.m., Jennifer presented a legal strategy that would have impressed Machiavelli. Incompetence is easier to prove than undue influence. We just need one doctor, 3 documented incidents of confusion, and a pattern of erratic financial decisions. The surveillance system alone shows paranoid ideation. What rational person spends $500,000 on cameras? One who wants to catch his children plotting against him, I thought, watching from my bedroom. March 15, 2023, the 4th anniversary of Catherine's death. At 9:33 p.m., while I was at the cemetery talking to her headstone, Michael admitted the depths of their plan. Dr. Morrison owes me favors. I've been referring patients to him for 5 years, mostly rich elderly ones with difficult families. He'll write whatever diagnosis we need. Early-stage dementia with paranoid features, inability to manage complex affairs, recommending immediate conservatorship. It's already drafted. We just need Dad to have a few more episodes. Dr. Harold Morrison was Michael's mentor from his residency at McLean Hospital, a psychiatrist who'd lost his license in California for overprescribing benzodiazepines to wealthy women with anxiety, turning them into addicts who paid $1,000 per session for legal drug dealing. He'd rebuilt his practice in Massachusetts with Michael's help, focusing on geriatric psychiatry, which meant convincing old people they were crazy and their families that commitment was compassionate. He was brilliant, broken, and buyable, the perfect combination for their purposes. I have him on camera in my home on April 3, 2023, at 3 p.m., pretending to be there for a social visit, actually conducting a cognitive assessment while I pretended to be confused. He asked me the date. I said April 5th. He asked me to remember 3 words, apple, penny, table, and I deliberately forgot penny when he asked me to repeat them 5 minutes later. He had me draw a clock showing 11:10, and I drew the hands pointing to 12:30. Every wrong answer went into his notebook, evidence for a diagnosis he'd already written. The documentation of my supposed decline was methodical, like they were building a legal case, which of course they were. They created a paper trail that would have been convincing if I hadn't been creating a parallel trail of my own. For every confused moment they documented, I had recordings of myself conducting complex business negotiations, running board meetings for the foundation, solving calculus problems for fun. For every forgotten appointment they noted, I had evidence of deliberately missing meetings that didn't matter. Why attend a country club finance committee when you can pretend to be senile and play golf instead? I was playing 4D chess while they were playing checkers, appearing to lose while secretly controlling the board. Between January and October 2023, I restructured my entire financial empire, moving assets through shells and trusts incorporated in Delaware, Nevada, and South Dakota, then through the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Every transfer looked like confusion but was actually calculated, each mistake actually a strategic move that would make the assets untouchable when the moment came. The Thanksgiving ambush had been planned for months with the precision of a military operation if the military was run by entitled children who'd never faced actual opposition. I knew it was coming. I had their emails, their texts, recordings of their rehearsals in Jennifer's Boston townhouse. Yes, rehearsals. They actually practiced the confrontation on November 19th, with Jennifer playing me while Benjamin and Michael refined their approach. If he gets angry, we emphasize it's for his own good. If he cries, we stay strong. Tears are manipulation at his age. If he refuses, we show him the doctor's report and the legal papers. If he has a moment of clarity, we say it's typical of the disease, islands of lucidity in an ocean of confusion. They had contingencies for everything except the truth. Thanksgiving Day, November 23, 2023, started beautifully, one of those crisp New England autumns that make you understand why the Pilgrims stayed despite the winters, the wars, and the witchcraft trials. The temperature was exactly 47 degrees at dawn, the sky the particular shade of blue that only comes in late November, and the trees still held enough leaves to be pretty but not enough to need raking. I'd been up since 4 a.m., cooking everything myself despite my children's insistence that I should have it catered. "Dad, you're too old to be cooking for 14 people," Jennifer had said. "Your mother cooked for 30 while dying of cancer," I replied. I think I can manage turkey for 14 while dying of disappointment. I started with a turkey, a 22-pound organic bird from a farm in Vermont where the turkeys supposedly lived better lives than most people. I used Catherine's method, brining for 24 hours in a solution of salt, sugar, and herbs from her garden that I'd kept alive through 4 winters. The stuffing was my grandmother's recipe, cornbread and sage with chestnuts that I gathered myself from trees on our property, the same trees Catherine and I had planted when Benjamin was born. The cranberry sauce was made from scratch, berries from Maine simmered with orange zest and a splash of Grand Marnier, Catherine's secret ingredient. The sweet potato casserole was a monument to excess. 6 pounds of sweet potatoes, a pound of butter, cream, brown sugar, and topped with marshmallows that I torched with the same kitchen torch I'd used to caramelize Catherine's last creme brulee. The green bean casserole used beans from our garden, mushroom soup made from scratch, and fried onions I'd prepared at 2 a.m. because store-bought ones were, in Catherine's words, an insult to vegetables and veterans alike. The family arrived in waves, like an invasion force with good manners and bad intentions. Benjamin first, of course, at exactly 11 a.m. in his Tesla Model S that cost more than most people's houses, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. His wife Patricia, a social climber from Newton who'd married him for his last name and future inheritance, carried their 2 children, Madison, 8, and Charles, named after me in a transparent attempt at manipulation, 6, like accessories from Burberry. The children looked miserable in their formal clothes, probably wishing they were home playing Fortnite or whatever children did now instead of learning to count. Jennifer arrived at 11:30 with her husband Robert, a corporate lawyer who billed $1,200 an hour and had the personality to match, dry, precise, and utterly without humor unless billing jokes counted. Their teenage son Tyler, 16, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, forced into a tie that seemed to be strangling his will to live. He spent the entire pre-dinner period on his phone, occasionally looking up to grunt when spoken to, a masterclass in teenage disdain. Michael arrived last, deliberately, at 11:45, with his partner James, a decent man who taught high school biology and deserved better than being married to a conspirator. James brought homemade dinner rolls that were actually delicious, proving that at least one person in the family had a soul. Michael made a show of checking my pupils when he hugged me, looking for signs of stroke or drug use or whatever he hoped to find. I let him look. My pupils were normal, my blood pressure a healthy 120/78, my pulse a steady 72. Disappointing for someone hoping to inherit. We sat down to dinner at exactly 2 p.m., as was Worthington tradition since 1887, when my great-great-grandfather started the company that became Worthington Industries. The table could seat 20, but we only filled 14 places, leaving gaps like missing teeth in an expensive smile. I sat at the head, where I'd sat for 49 years, with Catherine's chair to my right remaining empty. I'd set a place for her anyway, complete with her favorite wine glass and the napkin ring she'd used since our first Thanksgiving. I said grace, something I'd started doing after Catherine died, not because I'd found God but because I'd lost everything else worth believing in. Lord, we thank you for family, for health, for the food before us and the roof above us. We thank you for those who are no longer with us but remain in our hearts. We ask for the wisdom to know truth from lies, family from parasites, and love from greed. Amen. Benjamin shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer studied her plate. Michael checked his phone. I carved the turkey with the same Wusthof knife I'd used for 20 years, a gift from Catherine for our silver anniversary. My hands were steady as a surgeon's, no tremor, no hesitation, each cut precise and deliberate. I served everyone personally, remembering each person's preferences without prompting. Patricia's white meat only, no skin, as if calories could be avoided at Thanksgiving. Robert's extra gravy, which he'd need to make the conversation palatable. James's vegetarian plate I'd prepared specially, with a stuffed acorn squash that took 3 hours to make. Even Tyler got exactly what he wanted. Dark meat, no vegetables touching, cranberry sauce on the side, without having to ask. The conversation started normally, the kind of surface-level pleasantries that families use to avoid talking about what matters. The Patriots' chances this season, poor, but hope springs eternal in New England. The kids' schools. Madison was excelling at private school math, which meant she could count her future inheritance. Tyler had made varsity lacrosse, giving him something to hit besides his parents' expectations. Jennifer's latest case, defending a corporation against allegations of elder abuse, which was ironic enough to choke on. Michael's practice, growing thanks to referrals from families who needed convenient diagnoses for inconvenient relatives. Benjamin's hedge fund, which I knew from my private investigation was hemorrhaging money from bad cryptocurrency bets and worse management. At 2:47 p.m., between the main course and dessert, just as I was about to bring out Catherine's famous pumpkin pie, Benjamin made his move. He stood up with theatrical precision, walked to his briefcase — who brings a briefcase to Thanksgiving? — and pulled out a manila folder thick with legal implications. He returned to the table and slammed it down in front of me with enough force to rattle the china, knock over my wine glass, and send $2,000 worth of 1982 Chateau Latour spreading across Catherine's tablecloth like a prophecy written in burgundy. The wine soaked into the Irish linen, finding every thread Catherine had sewn during her chemotherapy, when her hands shook but her determination didn't. The stains spread across the cornucopia she'd embroidered, the autumn leaves she'd crafted stitch by careful stitch, the border of golden wheat that represented abundance we'd never lack and family we'd never truly have. The tablecloth she'd worked on for 3 months, refusing help, insisting that some things needed to be made by hand to have meaning. Now it bore the stain of betrayal, wine dark as blood, spreading like the cancer that took her. "Dad," Benjamin announced, his voice pitched to carry authority he hadn't earned and wouldn't inherit, "we need to talk about your future." The table went silent except for the grandfather clock in the corner, ticking away seconds that felt like hours. Even the children sensed something momentous was happening, looking up from their phones and plates like deer sensing a predator. "My future," I said mildly, dabbing at the wine with my napkin, a futile gesture but one that bought time. I was planning on having pumpkin pie. Catherine's recipe. The one with the secret ingredient. Is that not acceptable? "Dad, this is serious," Jennifer said, standing to flank her brother, a practiced move they'd rehearsed like a dance of deception. "We're concerned about you." "All of us," Michael added, completing their triangle of confrontation, their positions exactly as they'd practiced. "This is an intervention." "An intervention," I repeated, letting my voice quaver slightly, adding a tremor that wasn't there, playing the part they'd cast me in. "I don't understand. Is this about the wine? I can open another bottle. I have a 1947 Chateau d'Yquem that Catherine was saving for a special occasion. Though I suppose betrayal is special in its own way." They ignored the comment, too focused on their script to improvise. Benjamin opened the folder, revealing legal documents thick with whereas clauses and therefore statements, the language of legal theft. "Dad, you're not well. You've been forgetting things, making mistakes, isolating yourself. We've consulted with Dr. Morrison." "Without my knowledge or consent," I interjected. "For your own good," Jennifer said smoothly, her lawyer voice engaged. "He's conducted observational assessments over the past 6 months. His diagnosis is clear and clinical. Early-stage dementia with paranoid features, progressive cognitive decline, inability to manage complex financial affairs." "Observational assessments," I said slowly, as if processing the words. "You mean that dinner party in April where he asked me all those strange questions about presidents and vegetables? Or the golf game in June where he kept asking me to remember 3 words? Or the October visit where he had me draw clocks and count backward?" They exchanged glances, surprised I remembered but quickly recovering. Michael stepped forward, using his psychiatrist voice, the one that cost patients $400 an hour to hear their own problems reflected back at them. "Dad, the fact that you remember those specific incidents but forgot Mom's birthday last month is actually symptomatic of the disease. Islands of clarity in a sea of confusion. It's textbook progression." Catherine's birthday. March 15th. I hadn't forgotten. I'd spent it at her grave from dawn to dusk, talking to her headstone, telling her about our children's betrayal, asking for forgiveness for raising monsters. But they didn't know that because I'd told them I was going to a doctor's appointment, testing their surveillance of me, which was extensive but not complete. "What exactly do you want?" I asked, though I knew exactly what they wanted, everything I had and several things I didn't. Benjamin pushed the documents toward me, his fingers manicured, his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost $80,000, catching the light. "These papers establish a family trust with the three of us as trustees. All your assets would be protected, managed professionally, ensuring your care and the family's future. You'd never have to worry about finances again." "I don't worry about them now." "Because you don't understand them anymore," Jennifer said, her tone sympathetic but her eyes calculating interest rates. "Dad, you spent $500,000 on a surveillance system. That's not rational behavior." "You had the house painted 3 times this year," Michael added. "Different colors each time," Benjamin continued. "You fired the gardener for conspiracy." He was conspiring with the aphids against my roses. They didn't laugh. Humor was apparently another symptom of dementia. "Dad," Benjamin said, leaning forward, trying to look compassionate but achieving only constipated concern, "if you don't sign these papers voluntarily, we'll have no choice but to file for conservatorship." "Conservatorship," I repeated, rolling the word around like wine, tasting its bitterness. "Monday morning," Jennifer said, the threat sharp as the knife I'd used to carve the turkey. "We have Dr. Morrison's affidavit, documented evidence of your decline, financial records showing erratic decisions. The court will appoint us as conservators anyway, but it will be public, messy, embarrassing. This way is private, dignified, family business staying in the family." "You have 48 hours, Dad," Benjamin said, his voice final as a funeral. "Sign by Saturday at 3 p.m., or we file Monday morning at 9 a.m. sharp. It's your choice, easy or hard, private or public, dignified or humiliating." Patricia was smiling, already calculating her new budget. Robert was mentally drafting billable hours. The children were confused, Madison asking why is Grandpa in trouble, and being shushed by her mother. James looked sick, his decent soul recognizing indecency when it sat across from him at Thanksgiving. Tyler had actually put down his phone, sensing drama worth witnessing. And I was exactly where I wanted to be, had planned to be, had orchestrated being through 6 months of careful performance and calculated confusion. 48 hours, I repeated slowly, letting them think the words were hard to process. "You're giving me 48 hours to sign away everything I've built, everything your mother and I created together over 49 years, everything I've worked for since before you were born, before I even imagined you could exist and betray me so completely?" "It's for your own good, Dad," Michael said, and I wondered if he actually believed it or if lying to himself was just another billable skill. "Your own good," I repeated. "Yes, I suppose losing $118 million would be good for me. Lighten the load. Simplify things. Have you already decided how to divide it? Evenly? Or according to need? Or perhaps according to greed?" "This isn't about money," Jennifer lied with a straight face that got her through law school. "Everything is about money with you three. It has been since you were children, charging each other interest on Halloween candy loans." "Dad, you're getting agitated," Michael said in his doctor voice. "This is another symptom of having ungrateful children?" "Yes, I suppose it is." I stood slowly, letting them think I needed the table for support when really I needed to see their faces clearly, to memorize this moment when they thought they'd won. "I'll think about your proposal," I said. 48 hours. Saturday at 3 p.m. I understand the terms. Now, who wants pie? I made Catherine special pumpkin pie, the one with the secret ingredient she never told anyone but me. They exchanged glances, probably thinking I was having an episode, disconnecting from reality. Let them think it. "Bourbon," I said, moving to the kitchen with steadier steps than they expected. The secret ingredient was bourbon. Wild Turkey 101, specifically. A quarter cup in the filling, another tablespoon in the whipped cream. She learned it from her grandmother, who learned it from her grandmother, who probably learned it from necessity during Prohibition when the only way to make anything tolerable was to add alcohol. I served the pie myself, cutting perfect slices with geometric precision, each piece exactly 1/8 of the whole, the whipped cream dolloped with mathematical consistency. They ate in uncomfortable silence, tasting betrayal in every bite though they didn't know it yet, their last meal as a family, their last moment of thinking they'd won. "This is delicious, Grandpa," Madison said, the only honest voice at the table. "Thank you, sweetheart. Your grandmother would be happy to know someone appreciates it." "Did she make it a lot?" the child asked innocently. "Every Thanksgiving for 49 years. Except the last one, when she was too sick. I made it that year, following her instructions from her hospital bed. She tasted it and said it was perfect, though I think she was lying to make me feel better. Your grandmother was kind like that. She lied to spare feelings. I'm not." The adults shifted uncomfortably. The truth has that effect on liars. They left in a parade of luxury vehicles, Benjamin's Tesla, Jennifer's Mercedes, Michael's BMW, a convoy of German and American engineering worth more than most people's houses. I stood at the window watching them go, their taillights like red eyes disappearing into the darkness, leaving me alone with the destroyed tablecloth, the empty chairs, the grandfather clock ticking toward their deadline. But I wasn't really alone. I had the recordings on my phone, 6 months of conspiracy playing like a greatest hits album of betrayal. I sat in my study, Catherine's portrait watching from above the fireplace, and listened to my children plan my destruction. January 15th, the old man's lost it. 500,000 on cameras? That's paranoia. February 3rd, I've been documenting everything. Every repeated story, every forgotten name. March 22nd, Dr. Morrison says 6 months before we can file. We need more evidence. April 15th, the trust documents are ready. Irrevocable. He'll never know what hit him. May 30th, we should increase his confusion. Maybe switch his medications. June 18th, Father's Day was perfect. He called me Catherine twice. July 4th, by Thanksgiving, we'll have everything we need. August 12th, the money's just sitting there. Hundreds of millions doing nothing. September 5th, once we have control, we can finally live properly. October 31st, Halloween's appropriate. We're about to scare him into signing. November 19th, let's rehearse one more time. Benjamin, you slam the folder down hard. The next 48 hours were the most productive of my life, which is saying something for a man who built $1 billion company from a garage in Somerville. While my children celebrated their anticipated victory, drinking champagne in Benjamin's Beacon Hill townhouse, I had the recordings from his phone, which was still on my family plan. I systematically dismantled my entire financial existence and rebuilt it in a structure they could never touch, never find, never even understand. First call, 8 p.m. Thanksgiving night, to my real lawyer, William Brennan, senior partner at Brennan, Hughes & Associates, who'd handled my affairs since 1980 when he was a junior associate and I was an entrepreneur with more dreams than sense. Bill was 73 himself now, supposedly retired but still taking my calls because, in his words, your family makes corporate litigation look boring. Bill, I need you to mobilize everyone. Partners, associates, paralegals, janitors if they have law degrees. I want every asset I own transferred, hidden, or donated within 48 hours. Thomas, it's Thanksgiving night. They gave me a Thanksgiving ultimatum. I'm giving them a Black Friday surprise they'll be returning for the rest of their lives. Triple rates for anyone who works this weekend. How vindictive do we want to be? Biblical. Old Testament. Sodom and Gomorrah. Salt pillars. Plagues of Egypt. The whole 9 yards of religious retribution. My favorite kind. I'll have everyone here by midnight. What's the plan? Complete asset liquidation and redistribution. I want trusts in 17 countries, foundations in 12, and my children to inherit exactly what they deserve, nothing but consequences. Second call, 8:30 p.m., to David Chun, my forensic accountant who'd helped uncover fraud in 3 companies we'd acquired over the years. David had a gift for finding money people thought was hidden and hiding money people thought they'd find. David, I need complete financial audits on 3 people. Every transaction, every account, every penny they've touched in the last 5 years. Who are we investigating? I gave him my children's names. The silence was long enough to cook an egg. Your kids? Thomas, what happened? They're trying to declare me incompetent and steal everything. I have recordings of them planning it, practicing it, celebrating it. I need ammunition. Give me 24 hours. I'll find every skeleton in their financial closets, and I'm betting there are enough to fill a cemetery. Third call, 9 p.m., to James Morrison, different Morrison, no relation to the corrupt psychiatrist, a private investigator who specialized in corporate fraud but occasionally handled what he called family situations that require professional intervention. Jim, I need dirt. All of it. Every affair, every lie, every parking ticket, every time they didn't rewind a VHS tape in the 90s. Timeline. Yesterday would be good. Tomorrow morning is acceptable. Rush job costs double. Triple if you deliver within 24 hours. Quadruple if it's enough to destroy them. Destruction is my specialty. Give me their names and social security numbers. By Friday morning, Black Friday appropriately enough, I had enough information to destroy my children 3 times over and twice on Sundays. Benjamin's hedge fund wasn't just struggling, it was a criminal enterprise that would make Bernie Madoff blush. He'd been falsifying returns for 3 years, paying old investors with new money, running a classic Ponzi scheme with a modern cryptocurrency twist. He was maybe 6 months from SEC investigation, 3 months from collapse, 1 month from his largest investor, a Russian oligarch with a violent approach to customer service, discovering the fraud. Jennifer had been embezzling from her law firm's client trust accounts, borrowing money she always intended to replace but never did. Nearly $2 million over 5 years, taken in increments small enough to avoid detection but large enough to fund her lifestyle. She'd also been taking bribes from opposing counsel to throw cases, which explained her terrible win rate and excellent wardrobe. Michael had been selling Adderall and Xanax prescriptions to college students, using his medical license as a drug dealing permit with co-pays. He'd written over 3,000 illegal prescriptions, charging $500 cash for each one, building a customer base that included half of Harvard's MBA program. He'd also been falsifying research data for a study on dementia medications, ironically enough, taking $800,000 from pharmaceutical companies for results he invented while his actual patients deteriorated. But their personal failures were even more spectacular. Benjamin was having an affair with his secretary, so cliché it was almost disappointing, like finding out your villain is afraid of puppies. He'd been paying her rent with investor funds, buying her jewelry with embezzled money, promising to leave Patricia while secretly planning to frame her for the fund's collapse. Jennifer's husband Robert was having an affair with his secretary. Apparently secretaries were having a good year, but also with Jennifer's best friend, Jennifer's personal trainer, and somehow, Benjamin's secretary. It was like a sexual Ponzi scheme of its own. Michael had been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder by 3 different therapists he'd seen under fake names, each one concluding he was incapable of genuine emotional connection and potentially dangerous to vulnerable populations. The asset transfer was a masterpiece of legal engineering that would have made Rube Goldberg weep with joy. The estate in Weston, worth $8.7 million, with its 15 bedrooms that had hosted 5 generations of Worthingtons, was donated to the Massachusetts Conservation Trust with a stipulation that it become a public garden named after Catherine. The house would be demolished, the land returned to nature, with trails where children could learn about the plants Catherine loved and the woman who loved them first. The house in Nantucket, $12 million of beachfront paradise where Catherine and I had spent 30 summers, was transferred to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution for marine biology research, specifically studying the impact of microplastics on filter-feeding organisms, a problem Catherine had been passionate about solving. The apartment in Boston, $4.5 million overlooking the Common where we'd watched 4th of July fireworks for 20 years, became a halfway house for people recovering from prescription drug addiction, which seemed poetically appropriate given Michael's side business. The liquid assets, all $118,743,892.44, went into 17 different irrevocable trusts spread across 5 countries like hidden treasures they'd never find. The main one, the Catherine Hartley Worthington Memorial Trust, contained $80 million designated for environmental research and water purification projects in developing countries. Every village that got clean water would know Catherine's name, while her children would forget what clean money looked like. Another $20 million went to Alzheimer's research, with a specific provision that none of it could go to any study involving Dr. Harold Morrison or my son Michael, and including a clause that required all findings to be published open source, free to the world, because Catherine believed information should flow like water, freely and cleanly. But I did create one special trust, the Worthington Family Redemption Fund. It contained $3 million total, $1 million per child, but with conditions that would make Sisyphus's rock look like a beach ball. They could only access it by publicly admitting, in writing and in person, to their conspiracy, their crimes, and their attempt to steal from their father. The admission had to be published as a full-page ad in the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, and the New England Journal of Medicine. Then they had to complete 5,000 hours of community service at minimum wage, working specifically with elderly victims of financial abuse. Only then would they get $50,000 a year for 20 years, enough to live modestly but never comfortably, enough to survive but never thrive. Saturday, November 25, 2023, 2:30 p.m. They arrived early, eager as children on Christmas morning, if Christmas was about stealing Santa's workshop. Benjamin brought champagne, Dom Perignon 2008, probably bought with embezzled funds and definitely premature. Jennifer brought her laptop, ready to transfer assets immediately, her fingers probably already itching to type new account numbers. Michael brought Dr. Morrison, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, including prison, which was prescient because that's where he was heading. I met them in my study, Catherine's portrait watching from above the fireplace like a judge presiding over a trial. The room smelled of leather and disappointment, old books and new betrayals. I'd set up cameras to record everything in 4K resolution, though they didn't know it, their final performance captured for posterity and prosecutors. On my desk were 2 folders, one thin as their love, one thick as their greed. "Dad," Benjamin said, trying to sound gentle but achieving only the tone of a used car salesman approaching a grieving widow, "have you made your decision?" "I have," I said, opening the thin folder with hands that didn't shake, eyes that didn't waver. "I've signed everything you asked for." Their faces lit up like slot machines hitting jackpot, that moment when greed transforms into ecstasy. Benjamin actually poured champagne, the cork popping like a starting gun for a race they'd already lost. Jennifer opened her laptop, fingers poised over keys like a pianist about to play a funeral dirge in a major key. Michael actually smiled, which looked as unnatural on his face as empathy. "However," I continued, opening the thick folder like Pandora's box, "if Pandora had been a lawyer, there's a small problem. The assets you're trying to steal no longer exist." The champagne stopped mid-pour, suspended like their futures. "What do you mean?" Jennifer demanded, her lawyer instincts kicking in like a reflex, which was the only reflex she had left besides greed. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, I no longer own anything. The houses are donated to conservation and research. The money is in irrevocable trusts for charity. The cars are sold, the Bentley, the Aston Martin, even the 1967 Mustang Catherine bought me for my 40th birthday. The art collection is in museums. The Pollocks, the Rothko, the Bosky you always said looked like a child's drawing. The wine cellar was auctioned last night for $2.3 million. Every bottle from the 1947 Chateau d'Yquem to the $3 bottle of Boone's Farm I kept for sentimental reasons. All proceeds to clean water initiatives. I am, effectively and legally, penniless. Judgment proof. Execution proof. Inheritance proof. You can't do that. Benjamin shouted, standing so fast his chair fell backward. We have Dr. Morrison's diagnosis. You're incompetent. This won't stand in court. Am I incompetent? I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the wall screen with the ease of someone who definitely wasn't suffering from dementia. Let's watch some home movies. The first video, January 15th, them planning the conspiracy in my living room, drinking my wine while discussing my disposal. The second video, March 15th, Michael bribing Dr. Morrison with promises of referrals and cash. The third video, April 3rd, Dr. Morrison conducting his assessment while I deliberately failed every test. The fourth video, November 19th, all three practicing the intervention, Jennifer playing me with surprising accuracy. The fifth video, last night, them celebrating in Benjamin's apartment, toasting to their inheritance. You recorded us? Michael said, his face white as prescription paper. Every word. Every conspiracy. Every practice session. Every celebration of my anticipated demise. It's all here, backed up in multiple locations, with copies already delivered to certain interested parties who find fraud fascinating. What interested parties? Jennifer asked, though her face suggested she already knew. The SEC received Benjamin's files an hour ago. 17 counts of wire fraud, mail fraud, and securities violations. The Massachusetts bar got Jennifer's. Embezzlement, bribery, and breach of fiduciary duty. The DEA got Michael's. Illegal prescription distribution, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, and practicing medicine while morally impaired. Oh, and Dr. Morrison? The medical board received a comprehensive package about your false diagnoses, including 16 other families you've defrauded using the same playbook. Dr. Morrison ran for the door like a man who just remembered he left the stove on in another state. He didn't make it. FBI agents were waiting in the hallway. I timed their arrival to the minute, because if you're going to destroy your family, you might as well do it punctually. You called the FBI? Benjamin said, stunned, champagne dripping from his forgotten glass onto my Persian rug that was worth more than most people's cars but less than his bail would be. They called me, actually. Turns out they've been investigating your hedge fund for 6 months. I just gave them the evidence they needed, gift-wrapped with a bow made of your own words. You're looking at 20 years, Benjamin. Maybe 15 if you cooperate, though cooperation isn't really your strong suit, is it? Dad, please, Jennifer started, her voice cracking like the foundation of her legal career. The Bar Association will disbar you Monday morning at 9 a.m., ironically the same time you were going to file for conservatorship. Your firm will sue you for the embezzlement by noon. Robert will divorce you by evening when he finds out, though he's got his own problems with his various secretaries. You're looking at 10 years, maybe 7 with good behavior, though good behavior is also not your forte. This is insane. Michael shouted, spittle flying like his medical ethics. No, selling prescriptions to Harvard students is insane. Falsifying research data about dementia while trying to have your father declared demented is insane. Trying to steal from the man who changed your diapers and paid for your medical school is insane. You're looking at 15 years, plus losing your medical license forever, plus owing $800,000 to pharmaceutical companies who don't accept the check is in the mail as payment. They stood there, 3 successful professionals reduced to stammering children, champagne going flat, dreams evaporating, futures collapsing like houses built on sand during a tsunami. The family that had sat around my Thanksgiving table 48 hours earlier was destroyed, and I'd done it with paperwork and patience, the same tools they tried to use against me. There is one option, I said, sliding forward the redemption trust documents, My final offer that I knew they'd refuse. Confess publicly, serve your time, and when you get out, there's $50,000 a year waiting. It's not much, but it's more than you deserve and less than you need, which seems appropriate. You're our father. Benjamin said, as if just remembering that biology existed. Yes, I am. And Catherine was your mother. And you dishonored her memory by trying to steal what we built together. She died thinking you were good people. I'm grateful she never learned the truth, though I suspect she knew. Mothers always know. She just loved you anyway. I don't have that particular weakness. The FBI agents entered then, reading rights with the practiced ease of people who did this every day, applying handcuffs that cost less than Benjamin's cufflinks, leading them away one by one like a very sad parade. Benjamin went quietly, already calculating plea deals in his head. Jennifer cried, her carefully constructed life falling apart like a house of cards in a hurricane. Michael fought, screaming about entrapment and revenge, not understanding that justice and revenge can be the same thing when served at the right temperature, ice cold. Dr. Morrison had already confessed in the hallway, trying to save himself by giving up my children and 16 other families who'd hired him for false diagnoses. He got 8 years, served 4, and now works at a Walmart in New Hampshire, greeting customers who don't know he used to charge $500 an hour to destroy families. There's probably a lesson there about karma having a sense of humor. The trials were swift and brutal, like ripping off a bandage made of $100 bills. Benjamin's Ponzi scheme had defrauded investors of $47 million, including several retirement funds and his children's college accounts, which he'd borrowed from without telling Patricia. He got 18 years federal time, will serve at least 12 if he behaves, which he won't because behaving requires acknowledging rules apply to him. His wife Patricia divorced him before the trial ended, taking the kids and what little money wasn't seized, which was basically the change in his couch cushions. She sends me Christmas cards now, thanking me for freeing her from a marriage built on lies and SEC violations. The children, my grandchildren, call me regularly. Madison wants to be a marine biologist. Charles wants to be nothing like his father. Jennifer's embezzlement was actually $2.3 million when fully tallied, hidden across 17 accounts like a financial shell game where everyone loses. She got 12 years, will serve 8 if she behaves, though she's already been in 3 fights in prison for trying to charge inmates for legal advice. Robert divorced her and married his secretary, the main one, not the auxiliary secretaries, who turned out to be pregnant with twins. Their son Tyler took my last name when he turned 18, legally changing it to Worthington because, in his words, I want a name that means something other than criminal. Michael's drug dealing was the most shocking to the public, a psychiatrist selling Adderall to students he was supposedly treating for ADHD, creating the problem and the solution like some pharmaceutical Ouroboros. 15 years, no parole before 10, and he has to attend therapy sessions in prison, which is ironic enough to be a Netflix series. James divorced him but still writes to me, sharing recipes and asking about Catherine's garden, which he helps maintain on weekends. He's dating a nice accountant now who has no family members in prison, which he considers a significant upgrade. The houses I donated are serving their purposes beautifully. The Weston estate is now the Catherine Hartley Worthington Botanical Garden, free to the public, featuring her collection of heritage roses and the orchids she babied like actual babies. School children come for field trips, learning about photosynthesis and the woman who made things grow. Last month, a couple got engaged there, under the apple tree where Catherine and I renewed our vows for our 25th anniversary. The Nantucket House hosts marine biology students every summer, researching the same tide pools Catherine used to explore with our children when they were young and still had souls. The Boston apartment shelters 12 people at a time, helping them rebuild lives destroyed by addiction, which is really what my children suffered from, addiction to money they hadn't earned. The $118,743,892.44 in trusts has already made a global impact. Clean water systems in Bangladesh, serving 10,000 people. Irrigation in Sudan feeding entire villages. Filtration in Flint, Michigan, Because charity begins at home even when your home tries to rob you. Catherine would have loved knowing her death led to life, that betrayal led to benevolence, that our children's greed funded other children's needs. I live simply now in a 2-bedroom cottage in Concord, not far from Walden Pond, where Thoreau learned that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication and that most men lead lives of quiet desperation. My desperation is quite loud, actually. I laugh every morning reading the news about my children's trials. My neighbors don't know I was once worth hundreds of millions. They know me as Tom, the old man who makes excellent pumpkin pie with too much bourbon and volunteers at the library reading to children who still believe in happy endings. The children have all tried to contact me from prison. Benjamin sends financial proposals, still trying to make deals, offering to manage my money if I get him out, not understanding I have no money to manage and wouldn't trust him with a lemonade stand. Jennifer sends legal arguments about why I should forgive her, citing cases where parents forgave children for worse, though she can't actually find any cases where children tried to declare their parents incompetent for money. Michael sends psychiatric evaluations of my pathological need for revenge, diagnosing me with everything from narcissistic personality disorder to unresolved grief, which is rich coming from someone who sold Xanax to teenagers. I don't read their letters anymore. They go straight to a box labeled cautionary tales, which I'll donate to Harvard Business School someday as a case study in how not to treat your parents, how not to run a business, and how not to be human beings. The professor who teaches it will probably win awards for most depressing course and most effective birth control. Last week was Thanksgiving again, 1 year later. I hosted dinner at the cottage for people who actually love me, Catherine's sister Margaret, who never liked my children and told me so at their baptisms, my secretary from the company, Ellen, who saw them for what they were years ago and tried to warn me, James, Michael's ex-husband, who brings his new boyfriend and makes Catherine's green bean casserole perfectly, the FBI agents who arrested my children, because we've become friends and they tell great stories about other families who've tried similar schemes. We toast Catherine with good wine I can afford, tell stories that make us laugh until we cry, eat pie with too much bourbon that would be illegal if prohibition still existed. The trust fund for my children still exists, waiting for confessions that will never come. They're too proud to admit their crimes publicly, too stubborn to accept responsibility, too broken to bend toward redemption. The money will sit there, earning interest at 4.5% annually, a monument to chances not taken, redemption refused, love conditional on net worth. When they die, it will go to their victims, the investors Benjamin defrauded, the clients Jennifer robbed, the students Michael addicted. Poetic justice with compound interest. I'm 76 now, healthy enough to outlive my children's sentences, probably good for another decade if spite counts as a life force. My children will get out of prison when I'm in my 80s, if I'm still alive, which I plan to be just to see their faces when they realize I've outlasted their schemes. They'll be in their 50s and 60s, lifetimes wasted on greed that got them nothing but federal identification numbers and cellmates named Bubba. The money they tried to steal is doing more good than they ever did, helping more people than they ever helped, flowing clean and free like the water my company purified. Sometimes I dream about Catherine, and she asks if I was too harsh. They're our children, she says in the dreams, her voice soft as the roses she grew. They're broken, I reply. But they broke themselves. I just documented it. She smiles sadly, the way she did when one of her orchids died despite her best efforts. Some things can't be saved, Tom. Only replaced with something better. Then I wake up and tend her garden, growing beauty where betrayal once bloomed. The surveillance system is still running, all 73 cameras and 42 audio pickups, though now it just records birds in the garden, deer eating the roses, and the occasional Jehovah's Witness who doesn't know I'm Catholic. I keep the footage of their conspiracy, their ultimatum, their arrest, not as trophies but as reminders that the people we love most can hurt us worst, that family is just a word unless it's backed by action, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give your children is consequences they can't escape. 48 hours. They gave me 48 hours to surrender everything I'd built over 49 years. I gave them 48 hours to lose everything they'd schemed for 6 months. The mathematical poetry of it would make Catherine smile. She always appreciated elegant solutions to complex problems. And what's more elegant than using someone's own deadline against them? I still have Thanksgiving dinner at the same mahogany table, shipped piece by piece from the estate to my cottage, the one with the wine stain that won't come out no matter what cleaning products I use. The stain has become part of the table's character, like wrinkles on a face or scars on a heart. Catherine's embroidery, marked forever by that moment when Benjamin slammed down his folder and demanded my surrender, hangs framed on the wall, the stain preserved like evidence, which is what it is. But I also keep Catherine's portrait above the fireplace, moved from the estate at great expense and greater sentiment. Her eyes still bright with intelligence and kindness, watching over meals with people who deserve to be at our table, who bring potluck dishes and genuine affection instead of legal documents and false diagnoses. She was right. Character is the only real inheritance. My children inherited my money, but not my character. They got Catherine's genes, but not her genius for goodness. They got trust funds, but not trust. The company I built still runs, now part of Veolia but still using my patents, still cleaning water in 47 countries, still making the world literally better 1 gallon at a time. The technologies Catherine developed still filter contaminants, removing poisons from water like I removed poisonous children from my life. The money is gone, given away to causes that matter, doing good without my children's interference or interest. The houses are gone, serving purposes higher than property values, hosting students and souls who need shelter more than my children needed schemes. And me? I'm still here in my cottage by Walden Pond, making pumpkin pie with too much bourbon, growing roses Catherine would have loved, proving every day that the best revenge isn't living well, it's living it all when people bet against you, thriving when they thought you'd crumble, giving away fortunes just to watch from prison visiting rooms as they realize they'll never touch a penny. My name is Thomas Worthington. I'm 76 years old. I built an empire from nothing, lost a wife to cancer, destroyed 3 children who tried to destroy me first with paperwork and patience. I have no regrets except one, that Catherine never got to see the garden that bears her name, where children learn about flowers and families learn that some things grow from ashes and others just burn. The mahogany table will outlive us all, wine stain and embroidery, a monument to the moment when giving someone 48 hours became giving them exactly what they deserved, nothing but time to think about what they threw away for money they'll never see. The grandfather clock still ticks in my cottage, the same one that counted down their 48 hours, now counting up the years they'll serve. Sometimes, late at night, I sit and listen to it, remembering Catherine's voice, my children's laughter before it turned to greed, the sound of champagne corks popping prematurely. Time, it turns out, is the only real currency, and my children spent theirs badly. But I'm spending mine well, reading to children at the library, tending Catherine's roses, making pies with too much bourbon, and waiting. Waiting for the day they get out and discover that the world moved on without them, that their children grew up calling me instead of them, that their ex-spouses found happiness with people who don't commit fraud, that the money they killed their family for is building wells in Africa and funding cancer research and sending kids to college. Other people's kids who appreciate education instead of seeing it as a stepping stone to stealing. That's justice. That's poetry. That's what happens when you give someone 48 hours to destroy you and use it to destroy them instead, completely and permanently, with prejudice and without mercy, exactly as they deserved. Nothing. Thank you for listening to today's story of justice served ice cold. Look at your screen right now. Look at your screen now. There are 2 more videos. Both will restore your faith in karma. Hit the notification bell. Tomorrow's story will shock you even more. Remember, respect your elders, or become the next cautionary tale.